Billionaire discovers. Shocking truth as wife's unexpected act of cruelty exposes hidden injustice. Jack Turner stood at the precipice of his reality, a self-made billionaire thriving in the luxurious embrace of Santa Monica. Morning sunlight streamed through the expansive glass windows of their beachfront home, illuminating a life that sparkled on the surface, yet held unspoken darkness beneath. Just the previous evening, guests had marveled at the Turner lifestyle. Exquisite food, sparkling laughter, and stories of charity. But this morning, those eavesdropping whispers shattered the facade. He didn't anticipate that Olivia's voice would pierce through the tranquility, cloaked in sharpness, as he overheard her screaming at Maria, their housekeeper. The air thickened with tension as Olivia belittled Maria's struggles, mocking her financial hardships, throwing words like arrows. Jack's heart sank. With each deriding phrase Olivia hurled, outrage replaced admiration. Maria was a mother trying to make ends meet for her 2 children. And here was Olivia, a woman who believed in the social causes Jack fervently supported, now directly undermining them in their own home. Jack felt suffocated by the fierce contradiction of his life. How could he be an advocate for the underprivileged while allowing this cruelty to unfold mere feet away? His breath quickened as he considered his next steps. The very values he espoused were being flung aside in the face of his wife's privilege. Deep inside, a storm raged. Anger at Olivia, shame for his deception, and despair about the very fabric of their marriage. Questions haunted him. Was he complicit in this unintentional cruelty? Could he remain loyal to Olivia while standing firm against her toxicity? The weight of moral responsibility pressed down fiercely. A devoted husband or a champion of justice? Could he truly embody both? Before he could spiral further into despair, racing thoughts were interrupted by the realization that mustering silence wouldn't shield him from the revelation he'd just witnessed. He had to act. Compelled by an inner calling, Jack envisioned reaching out to Maria, offering support, perhaps even helping her find a better job, or sharing her story with those who needed to hear it. Yet the very idea sent chills down his spine. Would doing so ignite a war within his marriage? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each day that passed heightened the intensity of Jack's moral dilemma. He felt the magnet pulling him towards Maria in need, while simultaneously, the anchor of Olivia's expectations held him back. Last night, he had stared at the ocean, waves crashing in upheaval, mirroring his inner turmoil. Every conversation with Olivia felt increasingly strained, a latent confrontation simmering beneath their shared laughter. Jack shivered, the thought of losing his wife gripping his heart with fear, but the notion of siding with someone he viewed as an embodiment of his principles churned a deep-seated courage within him. He felt it bubbling, an urge to break free of the shackles of social expectations, confronting Olivia against the backdrop of their glamorous world. This conflict raged on, intensifying by the hour. A single moment could tip the scales, and Jack needed to know if he was ready to take that fateful step. His world, built on the very tenets of kindness and equity, now rested uncomfortably on the precipice of judgment. What would he choose when faced with the ultimate decision of loyalty? The thought sent him spiraling into uncertainty, conditioning every emotion for an impending clash. What was his choice? Comforting silence and privilege, or a veritable upheaval of his idyllic existence? Would he collide with Olivia, revealing the injustice lurking within their so-called perfect lives? Jack tilted forward, teetering on the edge of a revelation that threatened to engulf him. Jack awoke the following morning with a renewed sense of purpose tinged with urgency. The events of the previous day had left an indelible mark on him, Olivia's voice echoed in his mind, sharp and unsettling. He found himself in his home office, staring at the gleaming surface of his mahogany desk, its polished finish unable to reflect the chaos within. He was a man of influence, a billionaire, a philanthropist at heart. But now those very descriptors felt tarnished. As he sat there, contemplating his next steps, an overwhelming realization hit him. True change could not stem from passive observations. Jack grabbed his phone, his hands trembling as he hesitated, contemplating the consequences of reaching out to Maria. Could he be the answer to her struggles while risking everything he had built with Olivia? Yet staying inert felt like complicity in the injustice he had witnessed. He needed clarity amidst the turmoil, steering away from the gilded cage that had become his life. With a deep breath, he tapped Maria's number and waited, the ringing painfully slow. When she answered, her voice trembled softly, uncertain, yet hopeful. Jack felt an unfamiliar vulnerability, realizing he could no longer sit on the sidelines. He made an offer to help Maria with her resume and suggested she meet him at a local cafe to discuss potential opportunities. A simple gesture, but one that signified a vital turning point. After hanging up, Jack's heart raced. He had taken a step toward confronting his own hypocrisy, but would altering Maria's future open the floodgates for a rift with Olivia? Doubt gnawed at him, revealing a darker fear that had quietly seeped into his thoughts. He could not predict Olivia's reaction, nor the extent of her cruelty when the truth surfaced. That evening, Jack returned home, where Olivia awaited him in their spacious living room, the evening sun casting elongated shadows about the room. His heart pounded as he prepared for the confrontation he had dreaded. As they engaged in idle conversation about their day, every polite exchange felt increasingly hollow, accentuated by the brewing storm of his internal conflict. Fragments of their shared life, moments of laughter and joy, stood in stark contrast to the revelation he was wrestling with. Suddenly, he found his voice, as if adrenaline paved the way for a declaration that had long been stifled. "Olivia, we need to talk about what happened with Maria." The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. Her expression shifted instantly, from surprise to defensiveness, and then to rage. "How dare you bring her into our lives like this?" she snapped, her tone venomous. Jack felt the heat of the confrontation and stayed rooted, heart racing. He realized this was not merely a conversation, but a reckoning. "She deserves respect, Olivia. What you did was wrong and hurtful." The air felt heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. For the first time, Jack saw Olivia's true colors, her privileged arrogance reflecting in her icy demeanor. But beneath that facade was a fear of being exposed, perhaps even ashamed of her actions. Witnessing the shift in her expression, Jack understood the battle was not just an external conflict, but an internal one for both of them. For Olivia, it was the fight to maintain her narrative of power. For Jack, it was the desperate need to reclaim his values. Would he stand firm, facing Olivia's ire head-on, or falter beneath the strain? As he stared into her stormy eyes, a sense of determination ignited within him. He had to draw a line, to make the choice between catering to the comfort of wealth and power, or truly embodying the principles he preached. The moment of truth had come, and how they both responded could forever shape their futures. What Jack didn't realize was that this confrontation was merely the beginning of a deeper descent that would ultimately force him to confront the very foundation of his identity. Would he be able to reconcile his values with the person he loved? Jack stood in the throbbing silence that followed his declaration. The tension between him and Olivia a living thing, sharp and oppressive. Each second stretched unbearably as he tried to anticipate her next words, knowing that this confrontation was a test of everything he thought he had built and protected. "Respect?" Olivia scoffed, her laughter slicing through the air like glass. "You think you can lecture me on respect when I've provided for us?" Her voice dripped with condescension, yet beneath it swirled a sense of vulnerability that Jack sensed even amid her bravado. Those fractures in her demeanor urged him to push further, but he hesitated, analyzing his own motives. Was this about Maria, or was it about him reclaiming a moral high ground he had neglected for far too long? "Olivia," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "What I've seen in you, it's not the person I fell in love with. You've changed." Each word felt both liberating and frightening, as if each piece of the puzzle he was reconstructing held the potential to collapse their entire world. "Changed?" She spat out the word. "Or perhaps you're the one who has shifted, Jack. You want to play savior for her, for some pathetic woman you barely know? That's not just foolish. It's dangerous. It's a betrayal." Fury radiated from her, but a flicker of doubt betrayed her conviction. Jack noticed it and pressed on. "Betrayal? You hurt her, Olivia. You had no right to treat her that way. It was cruel." His resolve ignited a response in Olivia that he still could not fully comprehend. "Don't act like you're above this. Your whole life is built on convenience and preservation of your image," she scoffed. But there was a quiver in her voice that hinted at deeper insecurities. The realization struck him. He wasn't just battling Olivia's anger, but her fear, too. "And what about my values?" Jack retorted, feeling the weight of the words land heavily. "Those values you loved in the beginning? They're not something I can just dismiss because you feel threatened." With every exchange, Jack felt empowered, discovering the depth of his voice, realizing he no longer needed to bend to Olivia's will. He wasn't just defending Maria, he was asserting his right to exist authentically. In that moment, the facade of their world began to crack. Olivia narrowed her eyes, and for a fleeting heartbeat, Jack saw through her icy fortress. "You should think about what you're risking here," she said, a strange tremor in her voice. "I've worked too hard for us to be where we are. Is this career you dream of worth losing everything we've built?" Jack's heart raced. This wasn't just about Maria, nor merely a confrontation. It was a coming-of-age moment where he grappled with his aspirations and the monstrous reality of wealth, privilege, and now, a relationship he thought unbreakable. She was right. He could ruin everything if he pursued this path. But what was everything worth if it meant surrendering his integrity? "I'm willing to gamble it, Olivia. I cannot stand to watch someone else suffer while I sit comfortably in my bubble." The fire in Jack's chest ignited further with the admission, forcing him to confront what he had been willing to ignore for too long. "Gamble?" She laughed, yet the humor held an undercurrent of despair. "You think you can just walk away? Do you know what you're asking for?" "Maybe I don't know everything, but I understand enough," he shot back. "You're losing sight of what really matters." As Jack saw the scorn tremble on her face, he realized that their indelible bond was fraying. He hadn't meant to take a swing at the foundation of their relationship. But now that he had, there seemed to be no turning back. "Tomorrow, I will help Maria," he stated, conviction in his voice. "And you'll have to decide what you really want, me or your comfortable life." With those final words hanging thick in the air, Jack stepped back, his heart racing. This would either be the beginning of a new chapter or the end of all he once valued. But as he moved to leave, the fear and anticipation hung palpably in the silence, a new wave of uncertainty crashing over him. What would he discover about himself in the days to come? And was he truly prepared for the consequences of conflict brewing in both his personal and professional spheres? Jack awoke the next morning, his sleep fractured by the weight of the confrontation with Olivia still pressing on his chest like a leaden blanket. The sun streamed through the bedroom window, illuminating the room that had once felt like a sanctuary, but now resembled an incubator of his conflicted emotions. As he lay there, the events of the previous night replayed in his mind, but they didn't threaten to push him back into a corner. They propelled him forward. He had taken the first step into the unknown, a daunting leap fueled by desperation to align his life with his values. The timeline of his day seemed insignificant in light of the revelation ahead. Maria needed help, and deep down, Jack sensed that aiding her could redefine him. After dressing, he made his way to his small kitchen. The usual routine felt off. Each movement he made felt mechanical, as if his body were acting out of habit, while his mind remained preoccupied with thoughts of Maria's plight. He brewed his coffee, watching the steam twist and swirl, a lifeline of clarity in the chaos within. As the bitter warmth of caffeine coursed through him, Jack returned to his motivations. Compassion drove him, but so did the itch of ambition, the desire to challenge the comforts he had accepted for too long. He knew that he had a choice that would reverberate through his personal and professional landscape. The stakes had risen dramatically, and while the danger was palpable, so was the potential for awakening a version of himself that had long lain dormant. Jack sat down at his small desk, determined to outline a plan. He understood the depth of Maria's issues from his prior interactions. She had become a person entangled in a system that thrived on exploitation. As he wrote, he found himself crafting not only a strategy for supporting her, but also an outline of his newfound values and how they would reshape his identity going forward. A sudden buzz broke his concentration. It was a message from Maria, simply asking if they could meet. The pit in his stomach surged with conflicting emotions. Nervousness, hopefulness, and a hint of dread mingled in his thoughts. He quickly responded, suggesting a nearby coffee shop. After sending it, he realized he was already committed to a moment of reckoning beyond his own, potentially exposing the disparity and injustice facing someone who had so little. The minutes leading to the meeting expanded like a tightening loop around his chest. He debated diving into the complexities of her situation during their first interaction. Frivolous might be the best way to ease her anxiety. When he finally arrived, settled at a table with eyes scanning for her familiar face, Jack noticed how the cafe environment echoed his inner conflict. This was a space shared and loved by many, yet simultaneously layered with untold struggles hidden behind smiles and casual conversations. Maria entered, her shoulders heavy despite the forced lightness in her steps. As she spotted Jack, there was momentary relief in her expression that quickly morphed into a facade of uncertainty. He stood to greet her, and as they settled into conversation, he could feel the invisible barriers separating them. "How are you holding up?" he began, searching for authenticity in their exchange. As she spoke of her challenges, he felt a rush of determination. It was time to bridge that gap, to recognize and validate her struggles without judgment. With each shared story, he saw pieces of himself reflected in her plight, the echoes of vulnerability he'd buried deep within. In that moment, they were no longer so different. It struck him. The fight was not just for her. It was about confronting the ignorance he had cloaked himself in for years. As they conversed, Jack realized that he was ready for more than just helping Maria. He was ready to confront the broader injustices that festered around him, including those in his own life, particularly within his relationship with Olivia. The path to change and self-discovery was uncharted, yet rich with possibilities that could completely redefine who he was. Just as he was about to propose a plan for moving forward, Maria's phone buzzed, and her face tightened. Without thinking, Jack instinctively reached for her hand, anchoring her in the moment. But the looming uncertainty of what awaited them both began to settle like a fog in the cafe air. "All right, what now?" he thought. But before Mary could respond with words, he understood. The time had come to face not just her fears, but his own. Would the pursuit of doing what was right lead to a confrontation with Olivia that could irrevocably shatter everything? Jack's fingers tightened around Maria's hand, instinctively trying to offer comfort. But even now, a new swell of apprehension rolled through him. He could feel the weight of his own unaddressed fears threatening to eclipse the moment, the duality of their struggles intertwining yet wholly distinct. "Is everything okay?" he asked, masking his growing anxiety with concern for her. The phone buzzed once more, an unwelcome reminder of the external pressures contesting their shared space, a world that felt unavoidable yet foreign to him. Maria hesitated, glancing at her phone, her expression shifting from tension to resignation. "It's my landlord again. I owe him money." Her voice trembled slightly, and he could hear the tremors of despair woven into her words. "I thought I could figure this out on my own, but—" Her voice trailed off, leaving an unvoiced panic hanging between them. He remembered her earlier stories, the abrupt end to her job, the rising tide of harmful reality from her lack of resources, a reality Jack had only briefly engaged with in theory, now laid bare before him. The importance of urgency hit him hard. "Listen," he began, glancing around before lowering his voice. "We need to face this together. I'm here to help you. Let's discuss what options we have." The knot inside him tightened. He was prepared to swing open the door to her life, yet there he stood, nervously wobbling over the threshold of his own. Maria looked at him, a flicker of gratitude sparking her eyes. "I appreciate it, Jack, but I don't want to drag you into my mess," she replied, withdrawing her hand. Forcing himself to remain calm, Jack fought the instinct to pull away. "You're not dragging me into anything," he insisted gently. "This isn't just your fight. It's mine too now. I can't turn a blind eye anymore." He could sense that they were at a tipping point, pregnant with potential both for her and for him. Yet, even in the moment, doubt sowed seeds of hesitance in his mind. Would stepping into her world mean confronting his own failings head-on? Would it leave him powerless against the reading of his shortcomings? He swallowed hard, the fear of vulnerability battling against the urgent desire to stand with her. As they spoke further, strategies and practical ways to help began to coalesce, fueled by a shared sense of purpose. Ideas floated between them like encouraging sparks, igniting a connection rooted in compassion and action. His earlier intent to avoid complexities fell away like old skin, replaced with a magnificent clarity. Jack was a bystander no longer but an active participant, a burgeoning advocate seeking not only solutions for Maria but for himself in the process. Suddenly, the buzzing phone interrupted again, and this time, she cursed under her breath. "I'm sorry. I have to deal with this. It keeps coming and I cannot—" "Don't apologize," he cut in. "I'd hate to keep you from dealing with it. Just maybe take a moment for yourself." As she stepped away to take the call, Jack turned inward, grappling with the realization that he found purpose in challenging moments of discomfort. Perhaps Olivia's betrayal served as a catalyst, one that forced him to seize responsibility not only for his life, but for the lives of others around him. Jack felt a burning resolve swell inside him. For too long, he had shied away from conflict, content to let the chaos of life swirl around him. Now, like the steam from his earlier coffee, he could see clarity rising. The rising determination to confront evil in whatever form it took. As Maria ended her call, her face was still clouded, worry etching deeper lines into the light of her features. "It's bad, Jack. I don't know what I'm going to do." But this time Jack didn't hesitate. He was done letting fear dictate his actions. "Then let's make a plan." Just as he began outlining their strategy, a shadow flickered at the edges of his consciousness. How would Olivia react to this new chapter in his life? Would she stand in the way? The tension of his unresolved relationship was a dark current starting to merge with this new purpose. It was time to confront the past that clouded his path forward. In a world where integrity and justice battled against apathy, would he find the courage to sever ties, even with someone he once deemed an integral part of his life? The questions hung in the air, tantalizing and unsettling, as the cafe buzzed around him, oblivious to the storm gathering just within his heart. Jack took a deep breath as he pursued the thoughts swirling in his mind. Maria's situation thrummed in the background, a steady reminder that real-world stakes existed far beyond his prior worries. Yet he struggled to focus entirely on her plight. He needed to stay present. "Okay," he said, re-establishing eye contact with Maria as she returned from her call. The lines of agitation creased her brow, but Jack was resolute. This was about more than just plans and strategies. Each word needed purpose. "Look, let's break down your budget. If we can understand where things stand financially, we might devise a way to buy you some time. We can get creative, you know? Maria nodded, though her skeptical gaze hinted at disbelief. He could sense her inner turmoil, but pressed on, determined to sift through the chaos. You mentioned your previous job. Was it stable? Do you have any contacts who might help? She reluctantly considered the question. I guess, maybe. A former colleague, but let's reach out. Even if it's a long shot, it's worth trying. Every option counts. Her eyes sparkled momentarily with hope before she blinked it away. Jack recognized her hesitation. Part of him felt it too. The unease clawed at his gut. Could he truly navigate these waters without capitulating to his own fears? But running away was not an option anymore. As they discussed resources and potential job leads, an unexpected fullness filled the silence that used to characterize their conversations. Each exchange became a moment suspended in time, a painstaking construction of shared vulnerability. Jack felt moments of clarity blossom, creeping toward him like sunlight breaking through the chaos enveloping them. But even in this burgeoning alliance, thoughts of Olivia loomed. Jack struggled with the emotional debris from that relationship, battling feelings of loss against growing resolve. Could he truly champion Maria's cause while his own life felt ensnared in shadows? The contradiction tossed and turned within him, an unsteady dance that held him captive. Maria, he found himself saying, if I'm going to come along on this ride with you, you need to let me in completely. No more holding back. I can't pretend like I'm fine just because I'm talking about your issues. I need to confront my own. Her gaze held his, a spark of understanding illuminating the space between them. What do you mean? I mean I've been avoiding my own mess, he confessed, the words pouring from him as if painted by some unseen force. I thought isolating myself would shield me from hurt. Instead, I just let myself drift without intent. And you, here, dealing with your situation, it's made me realize it's time I stop allowing my past to haunt my current choices. Jack, that's brave, she whispered, awe lacing her words. It was a moment heavier than he anticipated. He was confronting vulnerability head-on, but the tide of doubt still stung in the recesses of his mind. Could admitting such fears foster deeper connections? Or would it only distort his purpose? One thing felt clear. He owed it to himself to step away from the edges of his comfort zone. Jack glanced at her, feeling the momentum shift between them. I think we both face a choice. Each of us has work to do. Yours starts here with tackling financial issues, and mine involves everything else. The past, my fear of Olivia's return. Maria's expression softened as her own bravado began to emerge. Then let's deal with what we can right now. Sharing the burden is better than carrying it alone. As they formulated a concise action plan, vigor replaced hesitance. A newfound alliance emerged from shared struggles, igniting hope and purpose within him. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, its persistent vibration interrupting their moment of clarity. He checked the screen, dread filtering through him as he recognized the caller ID. Olivia. Jack's heart raced as he fought to quell a swell of anxiety. Was she reaching out to disrupt this fragile new dynamic forming in his life? As the context of their conversation loomed ominously in the air, he could feel uncertainty creep in. The past threatened to ripple into his present. Could Jack push through the distractions? Or was this distraction the signal he needed to face the confrontation waiting just around the corner? As he steeled himself for her voice on the line, the implications of his choices began to unfold, hanging tantalizingly like fruit ripe for the picking. Jack's hands trembled as he allowed the phone to ring. Each tone felt like a drumbeat of memories he had tried so hard to suppress. Olivia's name brought a flood of unresolved feelings. She was both a comfort and a source of chaos. He could already imagine the predatory, familiar tone of her voice. Answer or ignore, he thought, weighing the consequences of each choice. The call felt like a threshold, a line between the man he'd been and the one he aspired to become. But before he could analyze further, he pressed decline, feeling the weight of the decision settle within him. That was... Olivia? Maria's voice was skeptical, tinged with concern. It was as if she could sense the tremors spiraling in his chest. Yeah, he admitted, the word quick and sharp. But I can't dwell on that right now. He felt Maria's gaze press into him, challenging him to dig deeper into what he was feeling. Are you sure? I mean, if she's part of your past, facing her could help? Conflicted, Jack saw the wisdom in her suggestion. At the same time, dread chilled his resolve. Instead of facing it, he knew he had buried those feelings, tangled emotions far too complex to unravel in a single conversation. It felt easier to redirect his focus back to her. There's a journey we both need to embark on, he said, striving for confidence, even if it means confronting parts of ourselves we'd rather avoid. Jack was surprised by his own determination as he continued. Let's prioritize you, and we'll see what happens with me. Maria seemed to relax a little. All right, let's focus on my budget. If I can stabilize my situation, it will free you up to deal with your issues, right? Exactly, Jack nodded, leaning forward as they dove back into the practicalities. As they mapped out expenses, contingencies, potential job leads, Jack felt exhilaration beginning to take root. The urgency of Maria's situation pushed against his uncertainty like a relentless tide, forcing him to engage, to act, to fight. This collaboration felt like more than just planning for the next weeks. It felt like a rekindling, a surfacing of a sense of agency he hadn't felt in a while. He engaged with the spreadsheets, brainstorming ways to cut unnecessary costs, seeking out ways to apply for community aid. With every new idea shared, Jack noticed he wasn't just assisting. He was evolving. Remember when you said you were unsure about your employee social network? Maria asked, her presence grounding him as she swiftly segmented resources. Maybe we could figure out how to leverage that too. It might lead to opportunities you hadn't considered. Great idea, he suggested, his mental wheels turning. He envisioned reconnecting with former acquaintances, people he'd drifted away from during his chaotic spiral. What if we framed each task as a part of building something new? He continued. Each step is a rebuild of our foundations. Now, the weight of past failures felt somewhat lighter, and with each plan they sketched, Jack could feel his confidence incrementally deepening. He had pushed himself to see beyond chaos, focusing instead on creating stability for both him and Maria. This act of collaboration was cathartic. The act of discovery, shared between them, pulled him closer to confronting his own shadows. As the sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating the room with a warm golden hue, Jack's phone buzzed again. This time, he felt a strange sense of anticipation instead of dread. Could it possibly be someone who could help Maria, or even reach out about his own future? Nervously, he reached for the device, the significance of Olivia's call lingering in the backdrop of his mind. Would this new communication spin the wheel of progress in a way he didn't expect? The possibilities hung in the air, thick with expectation, drawing him in without warning. Jack's heart raced as he glanced at the screen, the name blinking like a beacon, demanding his attention. It wasn't Olivia. Instead, it was a familiar name. Victor, an old colleague from his previous job. They hadn't spoken in over a year. Hesitation flared within him. He could easily let it ring, but something forged in their past compelled him to answer. Jack, it's been ages, Victor's voice came through, thick with nostalgia and an eagerness that momentarily lifted Jack's spirits. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just some planning, Jack replied, his mind racing to list the ways this call could either derail or propel him forward. What's up? Victor wasted no time. I've been working with a startup that's gaining traction, and we're looking for someone to help with project management. I remember how well you handled things back at corporate. Are you open to opportunities, The words hit Jack like a wave, daunting yet electrifying. Could this be a chance to step off the jagged path he had walked for too long? He couldn't escape the cacophony of voices that spiraled in his mind, suggesting he was unworthy of such prospects. Yet something deeper, a yearning for renewal, tugged him forward. "Yeah, I'm open to discussing it," he stammered, feeling the weight of his past reluctance slipping away. The prospect of a fresh start, a new challenge beckoned him. "Great, let's meet this week then," Victor proposed, a note of certainty matching Jack's emerging resolve. As they agreed on the details, Jack felt a flicker of hope ignite in the recesses of his being. After hanging up, a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation coursed through him. Each step he took towards the meeting front-loaded him with questions. Could he still manage a project? Could he leverage his network, rekindling old connections he'd once abandoned? "Focus," he mumbled to himself, grounding his racing thoughts. He decided to prepare thoroughly, poring over project management techniques and the latest methodologies. He reminded himself of his capabilities, the strategic thinking he had previously employed to navigate complex workplace challenges. A man had to believe in his value if he wanted others to recognize it. Amidst his preparations, Jack could feel the remnants of Olivia's call inching back into his thoughts, like shadows trying to reconnect. Would confronting her later help solidify his newfound resolve, or fracture it further? He didn't know what to do about her, yet he felt a stirring, a recognition that avoidance wouldn't foster growth. Confrontation might be necessary after all. Jack turned his gaze toward the window, watching as daylight faded, illuminating possibilities that now lay ahead. He took a deep breath, his fingers itching to look at his emails and dig deeper into Victor's proposition. Maria's voice broke through his thoughts. "Hey, do you want to go over the job leads again? I could use a second opinion," she called from her workspace. Her proposal felt like an anchor in the storm of his swirling emotions, and he nodded, pushing aside his uncertainties. As he crossed the room, a deeper sense of purpose wrapped itself around him. He was not just helping her, he was recalibrating his own trajectory, blurring the lines between support and his own reclamation. Together, they delved back into their screens, carefully sifting through opportunities. Each potential option unfolded like a new chapter, perhaps even a script to rewrite his narrative. But as he engaged in this collaboration, Jack couldn't shake the sense that Olivia's shadow loomed larger than he anticipated, and he would soon have to decide whether to face that darkness or let it define him. Time meant he didn't have to choose just yet, but options were running thin. His phone buzzed again, this time with a text. What would it reveal? Would it mark a turning point, or would the past catch up to him in an unexpected way? Jack stared at the text for a moment before reluctantly reaching for his phone. His heart sank as he read the message. Olivia had sent a simple, "We need to talk." The insistent rhythm of his heartbeat echoed in his mind, as tangled thoughts surged back, threatening to pull him under. There was no denying that her presence loomed heavily in his life, a dark cloud hovering above the potential clarity he had just begun to embrace. "Is everything okay?" Maria asked, noticing his furrowed brow. Her question felt heavy with genuine concern, stirring a need in Jack to shed his burdens, if only for a moment. "Yeah, just an old friend reached out, and now things are swirling," he replied, his voice laced with uncertainty. She raised an eyebrow, but nodded, shifting her attention back to the screen. "I think you should meet with Victor. It sounds like a great opportunity. And isn't it time to reevaluate your work-life balance?" Her words struck a chord within him. Wasn't that the truth? He had spent too long stuck in the rut of nostalgia and regret. Perhaps reconnecting with Victor could open the door to professional rejuvenation. But what about the emotional storm brewing with Olivia? Jack shook his head, trying to untangle the threads of contention. He needed a strategy, not just for his professional pivot, but for this personal dilemma as well. "I think," he began slowly, a plan forming in his mind. "I'm going to talk to her tonight. Maybe that's the closure I need." Do you have a plan for that talk? You should prep as you do for a meeting, Maria advised, a glimmer of support shimmering in her eyes. Her insight fueled Jack's determination. Perhaps this was less about confrontation and more about clarity, clarifying what he wanted in his life moving forward, both personally and professionally. That evening, he prepared himself, drafting notes for both discussions. One with Victor about the new role, and another with Olivia, bracing for the emotional confrontation. He couldn't shake off the feeling that the two dialogues might be interwoven, as if unraveling one wound might help him mend the other. He immersed himself in project management literature, absorbing concepts like a sponge. He envisioned how he would handle challenges and coordinate teams with renewed vigor. With each page, he reclaimed fragments of confidence he thought lost, each technique a reminder of the competence he had once wielded to great effect. But even amidst these efforts, thoughts of Olivia crept back, urging him to confront the deeper issues at play. As the time approached for his conversation with Olivia, anxiety settled in his bones. He rehearsed his main points: the need to emphasize growth, healing, and ultimately, the possibility of an amicable resolution. No longer was he the passive seat filler in their relationship. He aimed to assert his needs and boundaries. Navigating through sunset traffic felt like an extension of his internal tumult. Each red brake light was a pulsating reminder of the intensity of his emotions. He arrived at her place, steadying his breath and raising a hand to knock. Time felt elastic, stretching from the moment his knuckles met her door to the instant it swung open. "Jack." Olivia's voice was a tentative whisper, her gaze searching his. "Can we talk?" he asked, masking the turmoil within, while a determined resolve flickered beneath his cautious demeanor. As he stepped across the threshold, Jack understood that this was going to be more than just an exchange. This was a decisive moment, a pivotal intersection of possibilities that would alter the course of not just their relationship but of his own identity. But beneath the surface calm, a new layer of uncertainty unfurled. Would this conversation catalyze a transformation? What truths might emerge, sending shockwaves through the fragile stability he had begun to construct? The stakes were rising, and Jack felt the weight of what lay ahead. Would he emerge renewed, or would the echoes of his past pull him back once more into bondage? The answers waited just inside those walls, lingering like shadows, promising either clarity or chaos. Jack faced Olivia across the dimly lit room. The shadows cast by the evening sun illuminated their past, the happy memories mingling with recent anguish. He stood firm, a juxtaposition of apprehension and resolve. "I need to talk," Jack began, his voice steady yet edged with vulnerability. She nodded, her expression a mixture of expectation and anxiety. "About what? I thought we were fine." "No, Olivia, we're not fine," he stated firmly, finding strength in the truth that had long felt hidden beneath layers of denial. "What you did to Maria was more than just hurtful. It shattered my trust in us." At his words, her demeanor shifted. Shock morphed into defensiveness, a familiar rhythm in their interactions. "You can't be serious. You're letting this woman take you away from me. Why do you care so much about someone who doesn't matter?" Her dismissive tone ignited a fire within him. Each accusation solidified his resolve. This was not merely about Maria, but the values he fought to embody. "She does matter, Olivia. She represents everything I've failed to advocate for in our own lives. I'm not just a bystander anymore. I can't ignore her suffering, and I won't turn a blind eye to your cruelty." Jack sensed Olivia's defenses crumbling, the whirlwind of her anger now battling with the reality of her actions. "You and I have built this empire, and I'm trying to protect it. Can't you see how dangerous this is for us?" "Dangerous?" Jack echoed, a mix of frustration and clarity igniting within him. "What's truly dangerous is living a lie, being complicit in injustice while pretending everything is perfect. I've been scared, Olivia, scared of losing our life together, but more scared of losing myself." Her ice-cold demeanor faltered, exposing vulnerabilities as deep as his own. Jack noticed the flicker of fear behind her eyes, and for the first time, He viewed her not as a mere adversary, but as a complex individual grappling with her own demons. He realized that confronting her toxicity would not be a battle to win, but an opportunity for both of them to redefine the course of their lives. "I don't recognize you anymore." The woman I loved believed in compassion and community. Yet, lately, I see someone else fighting to maintain power over fleeting comforts, he articulated, his voice now trembling with the weight of emotion. "I want to find a way to rebuild, but only if you can meet me halfway. I can't keep living in a world of privilege while true suffering exists right under our roof." Jack held his breath, the words hanging heavily in the air, a pivotal crossroads waiting to be traversed. "But what does that mean for us?" she asked, her bravado wavering, the prospect of vulnerability dawning in her expression. "The truth is, I don't know exactly. But I have to figure out who I am outside of our marriage. I can't compromise my values and pretend that it's okay to demean those who are less fortunate." A silence enveloped the room, heavy with the weight of choices yet unmade. Jack could see Olivia wrestling with her own introspections, a painful yet transformative process starting to unfold. "Are you really going to choose her over me? Over us?" she posed, desperation seeping into her voice. "No, this isn't a choice between you and Maria," he clarified gently. "This is about understanding who I want to be. I need to be authentic. If that means leaving what we've built behind because it's toxic, then so be it. I'm ready for that." With those words, Jack confronted the ghosts of his ambition, self-worth, and the journey ahead. The choice scared him, but also exhilarated him, pushing aside the remnants of avoidance. He deeply understood that remaining tethered to Olivia could ultimately stifle his growth. For a moment, Olivia remained still, processing. Then, as if a dam had burst, quiet tears began to fall. "I don't want to lose you, Jack. I thought we were happy. I really did." Jack's heart ached seeing her unravel. "I know this is difficult, but we can't continue if both of us aren't willing to evolve. We've become trapped in our comfort, and I refuse to coast on that anymore." For the first time, Olivia's gaze softened. "I want to understand, to try. But it scares me, Jack." "And it scares me too," he admitted, a sudden sense of shared vulnerability igniting between them despite their differences. "But change requires both of us to embrace the uncomfortable. I want to champion Maria's cause. And in doing so, I hope to rekindle what we once believed together." In that moment of raw honesty, a collective understanding surged forward. Jack could see fragmented pieces of their initial bond beginning to glimmer dimly. "I'll try," Olivia whispered, contemplating the path ahead, no longer just about self-preservation but potentially mutual growth. "I need to learn not to fear the shadows just as you are. It'll take time, but if you're willing to help me, I think I can face this." A tentative agreement hung in the air, the future still uncertain, but no longer defined by the past. "Let's take it one day at a time," Jack proposed. "I will continue to help Maria, and we'll walk this new path together, owning both our flaws and our progress, cultivating our values from here forward." For the first time, both felt the tender beginnings of hope, a mutual concession of faith re-emerging in the space that had once ignited conflict. Jack finally turned toward the light he sensed beckoning them forth, a glimmer of flourishing possibilities beginning to unfurl. As he departed from their conversation, he felt lighter, buoyed by the transformation of himself and the possibilities of reinvention ahead. Not only was he rekindling his moral compass and reclaiming his identity, but he had also invited Olivia to join him on this arduous yet promising journey toward understanding and growth. And therein lay his profound conquest. He'd chosen authenticity over comfort, acting upon discovery rather than being enveloped in complacency. This pursuit, as daunting as it was, proved not only a personal achievement, but also a pathway to fostering the values he had long cherished. Jack stepped into an unknown future, where empathy and advocacy would drive his actions, reaffirming the life he aimed to cultivate. A chapter just waiting to be written anew. He smiled, feeling the dawn of this resolution settle within him. No longer would he ignore the reflections of his choices. And now, dear viewer, this is where you come in. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and crush it like Jack crushed his limitations. Comment down below with your reactions and theories about Jack's journey and how it might inspire changes in your own life. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's spread the message of personal growth far and wide.